The aphorisms and poems shared in this program are copyright Victor Fuhrman, all rights reserved, except for items that are given attribution to other authors and sources. Vox Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Fuhrman. Welcome to Vox Novus, the new voice. An aphorism is an expression of general truth or a principle observed through experience. I remember first learning this word when the practice of yoga blessed my life in the late 1980s, and I picked up a copy of the Yoga Aphorisms of 𝑃𝑎𝑡𝑎𝑛𝑗𝑎𝑙𝑖. This week on Vox Novus, I will share part 2 of some of these principles and truths that I've experienced in my life and have labeled the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. These will be included in my new book, slated for the first quarter of 2025. I'll also share some of the poems that are featured in my book, Circles and Rings, a collection of poetry from the soul. I grew up in the 1950s with 2 grandmothers, one Jewish and one Catholic. Both of them were loving, caring, and intelligent women. Coming from 2 different perspectives, they shared the same message. God loves us all the time, and especially when we love and are kind to one another. In my mid to late 30s, my spiritual path reopened, and I began attending a series of gatherings discussing all forms of spirituality. The woman who hosted these events, in her 80s at the time, reminded me of the energy of my grandmothers. One evening, she asked if she could speak with me after the gathering, noting that I was not resonating with some of what was being shared. She lovingly suggested that I pursue that which resonated with me and not worry about the rest. She then shared something that changed my life. She said, "Victor, God does not require that we be holy, but God would love for us to be whole." My life and understanding of the divine came through the wisdom, kindness, and love of 3 amazing women. This section is called Life Lessons I Learned from My Mother. She passed away in January of 2020 after gracing my life with love and so many pieces of wisdom. I share those lessons with you now. Once, when I had a very bad toothache and the dentist was not available, my mother said, "Take comfort in the knowledge that the pain will pass." She was right. She taught me that the thermostat on ovens is not always accurate and to set the temperature 25 degrees higher. She was right. She taught me that it's better to have people laugh with you than laugh at you. She was right. She taught me to be generous both materially and spiritually. She was right. She taught me how to hug heart to heart. She was right. She taught me that no matter how difficult times were, we never wanted for the things we truly needed. She was right. She taught me that it is okay to grieve after losing a loved one, and that tears are a very powerful form of medicine. She was right. She taught me, above all, to love. She was right. She was a deeply spiritual woman who taught her children to be responsible while being compassionate and loving. I am grateful for her shaping the man that I have become and for her deep and abiding love. She will never be further away than my heart. Thank you for your wisdom, Mom. I will cherish your lessons, life, and love forever. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. In my many years of training salespeople in the compressed gas and welding supply industry, one of the recurrent themes I taught was determining what the customer really wants. It sounds very simple, but so many overlook opportunities in trying to pursue the immediate sale without really connecting with the customer on greater needs and perhaps even improving process and profitability. This is where the art of asking questions and really listening to the answers comes in. It is the key to taking ownership of customer satisfaction. This process has a wider and more profound application. We may all think of one another as customers in life. When we share what's going on in our lives with one another, what do we really want? At the most fundamental level, it is to be heard and understood. Sacred listening is the foundation. Sacred listening means really hearing what is being said and felt without the need to interrupt and inject our opinions, criticisms, or comments. When those we are listening to have fully opened and completely shared what they've had to say, we can listen to our empathic selves, our inner voices. It is then that we will receive the guidance to address their greater needs. It may be some compassionate words, a kind facial expression, or a gentle hug. In this way, we take ownership of customer satisfaction, of the customers in life that we truly are, to one another. And if you take the W and the R out of ownership, you end up with one ship, the one ship that we sail through life on together. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. That aphorism speaks to a poem that I shared in my new book, Circles and Rings, a collection of poetry from the soul. The poem is entitled, The Gift of True Listening. There often are words that need to be heard, without cutting in or positioning. Your heart will be stirred and compassion conferred as you offer the gift of true listening. You'll create sacred space while bestowing great grace, with love all around you glistening. It may be any place where a soul you embrace as you offer the gift of true listening. So gift someone near you by saying, I hear you, lifting them up with your christening, and one day when you're due, you will be heard too, receiving the gift of true listening. Movie mogul Samuel L. Goldwyn said, I may not always be right, but I am never wrong. I worked for a man who frequently used this expression when an employee offered a suggestion for bettering the company or questioned the wisdom of his decisions. Essentially, it meant that his way was the only way, right or wrong. Sadly, his attitude shut down the flow of great ideas that would have enhanced his business and made it more productive and profitable. I'm grateful for the lessons I learned working for him, which ultimately made me a better manager and human being. In all aspects of life, when we listen, we grow, we learn, and we heal each other. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. Having a journalism background from many years ago, I still carry in my soul the precepts that all true journalists follow. For me, the most important of these are, journalism's first obligation is to the truth, and the second, its essence is the discipline of verification. Many have recently shared information purporting to be journalism or from journalistic sources without personal verification or corroboration from independent sources. Sharing this not only leads to misinforming others, it also stimulates anger, prejudice, crowd arousal, and unfortunately, ignorance of truly important issues. By the way, I'm very careful when I use the word ignorance and stress that my use does not imply stupidity, but its true definition, a lack of facts. I respect everyone's right to have their own opinions and beliefs. As shared by many great leaders over the years, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. I, for one, will not share a news post on social media or elsewhere that I haven't vetted or corroborated from at least 3 independent and trustworthy sources. I respect all of you and your right to the truth too much to do so. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. What is self-advocacy? Self-advocacy is learning how to speak up for yourself, making your own decisions about your own life, learning how to get information so that you can understand things that are of interest to you, finding out who will support you in your journey, knowing your rights and responsibilities, problem solving, listening and learning, reaching out to others when you need help and friendship, and learning about self-determination. Why is self-advocacy important? So that you have the knowledge needed to succeed and are given the chance to participate in decisions that are being made about your life. This is a difficult concept for many to embrace, mostly because of feelings of inadequacy and a lack of self-worth. How do you know if you're worthy to self-advocate? If you're alive, you are worthy. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. When compiling a code of ethics for paranormal investigators, 2 words were preeminent in my thoughts: responsibility and kindness. When called to someone's private home because they think or believe that paranormal activity is occurring, professional and ethical investigators will work responsibly so as to calm the clients, remember that they are there to help the clients feel safe and comfortable in their homes, and truthfully report their findings, paranormal or not. Further to this, if the determination is made that the activity is related to environmental or emotional factors, responsible investigators will maintain and provide referrals to professionally deal with these issues and follow up to ensure that the situation has been remedied. Kindness applies to both the living and the deceased. When dealing with the living, investigators will be respectful and mindful that their mission is to calm and truthfully inform clients and not find evidence to enhance the reputation of the team. Kindness is an extension of compassion for people who are upset, frightened, or confused and need reassurance and truth from those they welcome into their homes to help them. Kindness also extends to those in spirit who should be addressed respectfully, as if they were physically present. There is no place for provoking or threatening. Those who feel they cannot follow the path of responsibility and kindness should direct their efforts to public places of investigation and leave private homes for ethical, responsible, and compassionate professionals. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. Before I entered the Air Force in 1973, my mother had a friend of hers, an amateur astrologer, chart my path. She saw the following: I would have a major health challenge in the service but would recover and be fine. She was right. That my desire for fatherhood would be strong, but I would only have 1 or 2 children. She was right. That I would make my fortune in metals. Without seeking it, I had a 44-year career in the welding industry. She was right. That I would spend my senior years in a foreign land. I'm afraid she was right. What dreams may come is a line from the famous soliloquy in Hamlet. It comes to mind as I reflect upon a dream I had in 1965 that left me so shaken I had to write about it. I was 12 at the time, and it was an early autumn Saturday afternoon. I felt off and told my mother I needed to nap. I awoke at 8 p.m. and immediately opened a notebook and began writing what I saw in my dream. When I finished, I showed it to my mother, who began crying. She suggested that I bring it to my junior high school English teacher, who was also disturbed by what she read. She published it in the school's literary magazine, and most who read it had the same reaction. I attempted to locate a copy of that magazine from the school to no avail. My mother had a copy, but we could not find it among her papers after she passed. In essence, this is what my dream and the story I wrote entailed. It starts with the aftermath of a worldwide extinction event, one that I sensed at the time was post-nuclear war. It described everything humanity had strived to build and create, and all life was gone. This was followed by a period of the radiation abating, the atmosphere and waters being restored, and remnants of civilization buried under tons of rubble with no evidence it ever existed. Slowly, life began to emerge again with single-cell organisms, plant life, basic multicellular life, more complex animal life, and eventually Homo sapiens. Hunter-gatherer tribes led to organized communities, developing civilizations, and ultimately modern technological civilizations. Fighting between nations for limited resources, exploitation of people, and subjugation of populations followed. Ultimately, war broke out, leading to thermonuclear war and another extinction event. The dream, and my retelling of it, ended with the same description it began with. I entitled the story, Infinity. I pray my dream never comes true. Or maybe it did, and we could stop the infinite cycle with compassion, mutual respect, caring for one another, and most importantly, with love. If you were told that humanity and this planet we call our home could be healed and made whole, saved, by every human being extending love and compassion to one another, forgiving one another for hurts real or perceived, sharing with our sisters and brothers in need, and there are so many, and being stewards of this earth, would you take part? If the alternative was an extinction event, would you take part? This is not about religion, end-time speculation, or any specific or imminent event, just something to ponder. My personal answer would be, of course. That's how I've lived my life. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. There is a pun that I first heard in the 1960s. It was also shared by Russell Crowe in the 2003 film Master and Commander. The basis of the pun is that someone is given the choice of selecting one of two boll weevils. As one is slightly larger, that is the one most often chosen. But the wisdom sharer chides the selection, saying, "You must always choose the lesser of two weevils," wherein lies the pun. The lesser of two evils is an expression I remember hearing in the 60s, 70s, and 80s when it came to voting for political candidates where neither was the perfect choice. The message was to vote for the least unfavorable candidate. Perhaps this reemerged from my consciousness because of the state of our current leadership, executive and legislative, and the political process. Please know I'm not singling out a specific candidate or anyone currently serving in office or about to serve in office. What I'm saying is the best times in our country was when leadership came together in the spirit of compromise, passing legislation for the benefit of the majority of Americans and shining in the light of what American democracy was meant to be, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I pray we find our way back to that ideal and once again find unity and compromise through compassion and the highest of ideals. I have been tempted to form a new independent political party. The party will be called 5 C's. The platform will consist of the following principles: compassion, common sense, communication, civility, compromise. Actually, this isn't new. It's the way our government used to be. It's the way elected officials of both major parties, even when they were diametrically opposed to each other's views, came together for the good of the American people. Call me sentimental, but I long for the day when the 5 C's once again are the principles our leaders are guided by. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. One of the gifts I received from my father was his biting and often off-color sense of humor. When I was 15, he was very ill and went into a coma. While at his bedside in the hospital, he opened his eyes and looked at me. I smiled and said, "Dad, I have a new joke." He responded by softly saying, "No more jokes." I had the opportunity to tell him that I loved him. He closed his eyes, and he transitioned a few minutes later. In that very poignant lesson, I learned that embracing everything in life with an open heart is the key to living. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. I've had occasions when friends and acquaintances have shared the expression, "I will never mistake your kindness for weakness." From the first time I heard this, I couldn't grasp why anyone would think that kind people were weak. This would also imply that those who might offer kindness would be hesitant or refrain from this to avoid being thought of as weak. We live in a world where extending kindness and compassion to one another is essential. Think of how the energy of the entire planet would shift if each day simple acts of kindness were shared. We would be fulfilling the basic tenet found in virtually every faith, the Golden Rule. We would see each other as sisters and brothers, members of the greater family of humanity. And in doing so, we would recognize and embrace the strength and power of kindness. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. When we return on this special edition of Vox Novus, I'll be sharing more aphorisms and some of my poems from my new book, Circles and Rings, a collection of poetry from the soul, which is available on Amazon.com and other sites. I'll be back after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
Free your mind with Om Times Radio, IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Let's breathe. Deep inhale. Extend your spine. Exhale very slowly. Find mental health resources at loveyourmindtoday.org. This message is brought to you by the Huntsman Mental Health Institute and the Ed Council.
The aphorisms and poems shared in this program are copyright Victor Fuhrman, all rights reserved, except for items that are given attribution to other authors and sources. Back on Vox Novus as we continue with the Aphorisms of Fuhrman and a few chosen poems from my book, Circles and Rings, a collection of poetry from the soul. I know that many will be continuing holiday shopping over the next few days, looking for the perfect gift for family and friends. May I humbly offer that there are special gifts that cannot be purchased online or in a store, that will be so welcomed by those who receive them. Here are a few of those gift ideas. A warm hug with permission for someone who needs to feel loved. A gift of listening again, non-judgmentally and without the need to interject, for someone who feels they need to be heard. A genuine smile and thank you by name for someone who is serving you in a store. A helping hand by offer, may I give you a hand? And acknowledgement, yes, thank you, for someone who needs physical assistance in an activity, carrying groceries, shoveling snow, loading a car, just about anything. Telling someone you love them just as they are and meaning it. We need to pause, take a breath, and take time for these simple expressions of kindness in a world that truly needs them now. Thank you for taking the time to listen and embrace this. You are loved. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. Continuing the theme of the greatest gifts that we may give each other, I have 3 called the 3 L's, and these gifts are priceless. Number 1, listening. Truly listening without judgment or interruption to someone who needs to be heard. Looking at each other with eyes of compassion and recognizing the commonality of human experience. Number 3, loving with an open heart, even when this is the hardest thing to do. May we offer each other these 3 L's today and every day. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. This aphorism concerns 3 words: favor, service, and the great gift. Favor, an act of kindness beyond what is due or usual. I've come to ask you a favor. Synonyms include a good turn, a good deed, kindness, or act of kindness. Service, the action of helping or doing work for someone. Millions are involved in voluntary service. Synonyms include a favor, kindness, good turn, and helping hand. The great gift, doing a favor or performing a service so that the recipient does not see it as a favor or service, and the grantor, performer, does it without condition or expectation of acknowledgement or reward. The great gift. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. The 4th line of the 23rd Psalm reads, Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. My wonderful spiritual teacher used to share that the line reads, walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and implies we do not stay there. Grief is a complicated process and different for each of us, but I always take comfort in that teaching, with the knowledge that blessed memories of our departed loved ones will linger long after they pass. For all of those grieving the loss of a loved one, my total compassion as we walk through that valley together. Here are 3 short aphorisms. The most difficult demons to exorcise are those we create based upon feelings of inadequacy, low self-esteem, and the absence of love. If you own your fears will never own you. A personal life lesson worth sharing. No challenge has ever been as difficult in reality as I may have preconceived in my imagination. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. The only way to liberate ourselves from old habits, bad relationships, and negativity is to be truly willing and ready to let them go. So many of us have a tendency to hold on to that which no longer serves us. It takes courage and directed intention. Freedom is achieved by letting go. Which leads to the poem, There are those who choose to suffer, and this will be their fate. There are those who ask for deliverance, and often much too late. There are those who ask for healing, but are unwilling to take part. For those who truly want this change are ready in mind and heart. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. A friend asked me what I've learned in my 71 years of life. Not much, not really. Actually, I've gained a little insight along the way. The more I think I know, the more I realize I don't know. Learning, and more importantly, understanding, is a process that goes on infinitely. There is nothing that I can't accomplish, provided it follows two cosmic rules: that it is for my highest good, and that it does not detract from anyone else's highest good. Life is not guaranteed. It is precious, fleeting, and we must do everything in our power to take care of this gift that we've been given. Without preaching, I beseech all of you who still smoke to consider quitting very seriously. I've had several friends either transition or become extremely ill recently because of smoking, and I ask this selfishly because I don't want to lose you. I've learned to let go of negative emotions or feelings quickly. They are not worth holding on to and are destructive to us. Justified anger should result in constructive and positive action rather than internalized brooding and discontent. A wonderful teacher once told me that hating someone is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. This world is filled with magic. It can enhance our lives and expand our vistas if we open our hearts and minds and allow it to. Forgiveness, compassion, and kindness are keys to a joyous life. And last and most importantly, it has been said by those much wiser than I, love is not the only thing, love is everything. Life lessons in my 71 years. Several years ago, I was in the woods near Sandyston, New Jersey. I turned around and was startled to see a huge black bear staring me right in the face. He sniffed me a couple of times, and I softly prayed, saying, "Please, please don't eat me." He smiled and said, to my surprise, "Don't worry, human, I'm on a GMO-free diet." I met a goddess on my return flight from a business trip recently. She must have been in a hurry to get wherever goddesses go, as she seemed to be anxious to deplane. She was behind me, struggling to get her carry-on from the overhead compartment. I turned and offered assistance, and she nodded. I handed her the bag and then stepped back into my seat, gesturing in a please-go-first manner. She paused, smiled very warmly, and said thank you, and then quickly ran off the plane. How do I know that she was a goddess? When your heart is open, the goddess will smile warmly upon you. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. At my stage of life, I've learned not to be swayed by anyone else's opinion about anything. This leaves so much room for missed opportunity. If we meet someone and we resonate with them, wonderful. If we do not resonate with them, this is a learning opportunity to find out what there is about them that mirrors a part of ourselves that we are uncomfortable with, and work on this if we choose to do so. Either way, the experience is meaningful. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. If love is lost, kindness must prevail, based on the love that started it all. Anger and bitterness cloud the heart and soul, leaving no room for healing or being emotionally and spiritually available for new love. Forgive, forget, and move on. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. Life is like a great piece of music. It starts with silence, bursts into a series of crescendos and decrescendos, and ends with silence. May each of your personal symphonies be balanced, rich, and filled with mostly high notes and love. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. Letting go was a challenge for most of us. Whether a career or job that pays the bills but does not fulfill us, or a bad relationship, the human approach is often better the devil we know than the devil we don't. The Greek philosopher Aristotle coined the term horror vacui, commonly translated as nature abhors a vacuum. Simply put, empty or unfilled spaces are unnatural as they go against the laws of nature and physics. Apply this to your life. Let go of those things that no longer serve you, that hold you back, and inhibit your growth and happiness. Nature will fill this vacuum with new opportunities and people. Reflect on what did not work with who and what you let go, and use this opening to make better choices upon experience. Am I just spouting pie in the sky? Well, no, as I have applied this idea several times in my own life, and it worked. Is age a problem? Considering I let go of my former employment in 2018 at age 65 and within hours had a new and much better position, you can do this at any age. Allow 2025 to be your year to let go, create the space, and fill it with the new. This is the time for radical kindness. Today, the checkout lines at a local supermarket were taking more than an hour with full staff. People were angry, nervous, and complaining as shelves were emptying. Even the thought of cutting into a line might have resulted in an outburst. I was online for about 20 minutes when a woman who was obviously in her 80s emerged from one of the aisles. An expression of dismay crossed her face, looking at the lines. My first thought was to invite her to cut in front of me, but I sensed that this might anger some of the people behind me who were already tense and upset. Instead, I stepped out of line, invited the woman to take my place, and demonstrated to those behind me that I was heading for the end of the line. Her eyes watered, and so did mine. She thanked me warmly, and I wished her well as I walked back. The expression on some of the faces transformed from upset to a sense of appreciation and understanding. This is the time for radical kindness. Someone said, when you can't control what's happening, control the way you respond to what's happening, for that is where your power is. I remember the opening from A Course in Miracles. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Reality exists by our creation. If we create with positive energy, compassion, and love, we are fulfilling our purpose. Rather than define what will transpire as positive or negative, great change is most definitely coming. For those of us holding the space with positive energy, compassion, and light, we will be on call to shepherd those who need reassurance and love. We've been preparing lifetime after lifetime. We've served before, and we will serve again. Blessed are the light workers, for they bring illumination, healing, and love. Someone asked me how to establish a regular meditation practice. This person said they might set it up on their calendar app with a notification in advance, or use other digital forms of being advised when to meditate. I responded that the Buddha and his followers, the Swamis, the Zen masters, and the yogis and yoginis of old did not have cell phones, computers, or even rudimentary timepieces. They used their internal clocks, along with the natural cycles of life, to know when to meditate, as well as pray, eat, sleep, work, and everything else. My advice to my friend, begin by meditating when you wake up and again before you go to bed. Start with a few minutes during each session, closing with a prayer of gratitude for this very personal, quiet, and reflective time. When comfortable, add another session during the day if desired. With practice, your internal app will manage the rest. In this life, you must ask for what you want. Just make certain you know what you want before you ask for it. It may look right, it may sound right, But if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. Trust your gut. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. I recently had an insight. Perhaps this is something others have found, but this was a new experience for me. I've been blessed with a great memory. The hard drive in my brain seems to be very expansive, but like others who have walked this planet for a while, a data retrieval is not as fast as it was when I was younger. When I've tried to remember something and spent a lot of time using forced associations for the memory, I usually struggle, and it eventually comes to the surface, often hours later. Today, I began my forced process of remembering and then let go. And to my amazement, the memory came immediately after I stopped trying. I experimented with this a few times, and it worked every time. Therefore, at least for me, initiating the search and getting out of the way seems to be my method of fast access and retrieval. The human mind never ceases to amaze me. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. I was preparing to officiate a funeral and learned of the passing of a friend. Every day brings so many posts of people sharing their losses and grief. From personal loss, and also having officiated many funerals in my 26 years since ordination, there is one message that I would share. Tomorrow is never guaranteed. If you love someone, tell them today. If they have enriched your life in any way, thank them today. If you have had a disagreement or a falling out, mend that today. We all grieve loss differently, but the burden is lighter when every time we say goodbye, we have said it with love. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. We'll be back with more after these words on the 𝑃𝑎𝑡𝑎𝑛_Times Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
The aphorisms and poems shared in this program are copyright Victor Fuhrman, all rights reserved, except for items that are given attribution to other authors and sources. Back on Vox Novus, this evening we're going through some of my aphorisms of Fuhrman, and I'll share another poem from my just-published book, Circles and Rings, a collection of poetry from the soul, which is available on Amazon. Like most of us, there are times when I have my doubts about the value of what I share in this world. I'll question whether the effort is worthwhile, and if my time might be better spent on other pursuits. Then someone leaves me a message, sends an email, or calls me and thanks me for that time when I shared a few compassionate words, some advice that came from spirit, or just listened when they needed to be heard. I might not even remember that time or what I was called to share or to do, but the gratitude extended reminds me to keep doing what I'm doing. If one person's day is made a little better, then the effort is most certainly worthwhile. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. There's something about azalea blossoms, something otherworldly. Perhaps it's just the way I see energy, but they seem truly radiant compared to the green ivy leaves. Their lifespan is so ephemeral. Their message to me, spread love with all your heart while you are here. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. Blessed are the caretakers, for theirs is the burden of love. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. I had the blessing of a very special teacher when I attended the New Seminary of New York back in the mid-1990s. He shared a concept called the fractured Messiah, in which he said that people of all faiths are waiting for the return of their respective Messiah, teacher, or deliverer. His suggestion was that when we recognize the oneness of all in our hearts and minds, the wait will be over. That the one we have all been waiting for is us. On that day, there will truly be peace on earth. I personally hope and pray that we see this in our lifetime, and by sharing this message, we bring that recognition one day closer. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. Thanksgiving brings remembrance of my late mother-in-law, Shirley Brockway, and her wisdom. She would say to her family and friends, "Cast your bread upon the waters, and it will come back to you, toasted and buttered." Shirley certainly practiced what she preached. She served so many people and communities, including the elderly and infirmed, well into her 90s. She truly loved her neighbors as herself, a shining example for all of us. When we gather with family and friends, let's think about our neighbors and what we may do to serve those in need. Simple acts of kindness will make our world a better place for all of us. This year, Christmas Eve coincides with Hanukkah. During the Festival of Light, an additional candle is added for each of the 8 nights to the menorah. The word menorah means lampstand and comes from the ancient Semitic root word, which means to shine. May light shine in the hearts of all humanity during this season of light. May we recognize each other as brothers and sisters and truly know that we are here to extend kindness, understanding, and to love one another, the basic tenet of all faiths. May the holy days that each of you celebrate be filled with warmth, love, and peace. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. One of the hardest lessons for many healers, empaths, and spiritual counselors to learn, myself included, is to give ourselves the same loving kindness and caring that we extend to others, and the hardest part for many, to know that we are worthy to receive it. Compassion must start from within. Love yourself first. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. I've always loved Peter Gabriel's song, Salisbury Hill. When I first heard it in 1977, I thought he was sharing about either a spiritual or ET experience. The final line of his lyric, "You can keep my things, they've come to take me home." In later years, I read an interview with Gabriel in which he said, quote, "It's about being prepared to lose what you have for what you might get. It's about letting go." For him, it was letting go of being part of Genesis, a highly successful group, and following his own musical calling. He succeeded. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. I live my life by following the essential meaning of these 2 lines. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, the golden rule which is found in the Bible and variations in almost every faith, And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make, of course, from the Beatles. For me, that's it in a nutshell. I put on an old, beat-up but comfortable pair of walking shoes this morning. I realized that I identify with those shoes. Old, beat up, but comfortable. Then it dawned on me. I'm an old soul in old souls. Ah, the joys of maturity. Never underestimate the power of like minds joined in common consciousness to change the world. In response to several friend requests that I've received and declined, I share the following. If you spread hate and lies, I'm not your guy. If you try to dominate with fear, don't come around here. If you make someone an other, I'm definitely not your brother. But if you lovingly embrace your brother and sister, well then, I'm your mister. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. For the first 45 years of my life, I was known to everyone as Vic, the shortened form of my name. For my 46th birthday, I was gifted with an Akashic record reading. The reader asked me how I used my name. I explained that I was known as Vic, and that everyone called me Vic, and I referred to myself as Vic. She shared that I must use my entire name, as the shortened form was cutting off my or, the Hebrew word for light. I followed her reading advice, and it was life-changing. When you get to the age that friends in your peer group start transitioning, it makes you think of your own mortality, how much time you have left, and what you want to do with that time. I, for one, choose to make the most of the time I have left in this existence and share what I've learned and have yet to learn with those who will take that experience and do even greater things with it. From the Aphorisms of Fuhrman. There are many iterations of an old joke about the golden phone. Those older than 30 will remember that in the days before cell and computer phones, we had wired telephones and payphones. With the original phone companies, you were charged for local or long-distance calls, and the rates depended on how far away and the number of minutes. In this joke, the golden phone was a direct line to heaven and the divine. The basic telling was about a reporter who learned of this special phone and went traveling to different locations to find out more about it. He went to certain houses of worship and asked how much the call would cost. This communication was expensive, with the average charge around $10,000. He would then travel to places like Jerusalem, Rome, Ireland, or Texas, and would be told that the call was only 25 cents. Amazed at the incredibly low charge, he would ask why. The answer would always be, it's a local call. The implication was that these places were close to heaven. For those who question why Ireland or Texas would earn the honor, just think of two songs. Ireland Must Be Heaven Because My Mother Came From There from 1916, and Tanya Tucker's Texas When I Die. I am certain that if you were to ask anyone from Ireland or Texas today, they would agree. My offering is that you need not travel to access the golden phone, as it is as close as your heart. Your heart is your direct connection to heaven and the divine as you perceive them within your faith. Simply find some quiet time for meditation and reflection, open your heart, and make the call. What will the charge be? No charge. With Spirit, you're on the unlimited plan, and it's always a local call. For several weeks, I've been experiencing vivid dreams with total recall when I awake. Many of them have been a life review theme, both this life and past lives. Some of them have been messages from spiritual and extra-dimensional guides. but a recent dream had me awaken in tears. I dreamt that I was enrolled in the Angelic Academy. It was graduation, and after the ceremony, each of us was called into a great hall for assignment. The hall had tables in a U formation with celestial beings filling every table. I was instructed to walk from table to table, pausing in front of each being for a moment until they nodded, and then moving on to the next. There were 18 of these celestial encounters. The eye contact and energy was transcendent, the deepest, most profound love I have ever experienced. When I completed each of these spiritual evaluations, I was instructed to stand in the center, facing the main table. It was there that I was given my assignment. I was assigned as a counselor to my brother and sister angels to comfort them and encourage them on their paths. I was to be an angel to other angels, and I was given the name Aviel. I woke up in tears. Thank you for joining me and allowing me to share these aphorisms of Fuhrman and some of the poems from my book, Circles and Rings, a collection of poetry from the soul, which is available on Amazon. To you and your families, a happy Hanukkah, a joyous Christmas, and a happy and healthy New Year.